Je vais commencer après quand je vais te donner.
Non, je pense que...
Non, vas-y.
Ouais, je pense que c'est... Il faut que je t'introduise.
Oui, oui.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being all together in the room. I think we are going to start in 1 minute. So if colleagues can take the seats. Wow, it's like in a theater, big silence. So we will begin. We will be the ones starting the play. Thank you very much for being there and enjoying the conversation. Thank you for the organization of this big event to the City of Dublin, UCLG. So this first session, with which we open these few days of discussions, is dedicated to the capital of culture working together. I'm Valeria Marcolin, co-director of Culture et Développement, and I have been honored to lead the conversations together with my colleague Ramatou Kasso, advisor on policy and international relations at UCLG Africa. So I will take 1 minute to make a brief introduction on the panel and then leave the floor to Ramatuka as chair to start with some few considerations. Originated in Europe almost 40 years ago, the concept of capital of culture is designed not only to highlight the richness and diversity of culture from across the world, but also to increase citizens' sense of belonging to common cultural areas and foster the contribution of culture to the development of cities. All along the years, and now worldwide, we will see this through the panels, the experience has proved that the initiative contributes significantly to the recognition and reconnection between the people and the local culture ecosystem. Also, some capital initiatives as aimed at the regeneration of districts or cities to enhance their profile and image at the international level, and to boost tourism, thus being a real driver of local sustainable development. This workshop will connect the regional, continental, and/or national dimension of capital of culture and initiatives, exploring improved and concrete cooperation among them, in the frame of the global conversation on culture and development, including the debate of the inclusion of the culture goal in the future sustainable development agendas. This workshop will also contribute to raising the attention on the need for multi-level partnership, peer learning exchanges, and capacity building support to better connect and capitalize on what is being achieved all around the world. In this perspective, the workshop is connecting to the Capital of Culture Together initiative supported by the European Commission that we thank for the support to the organization of this panel. Thank you very much. So this was, of course, a very brief introduction that we will be able to deep further thanks to the contribution of the panelists, and I will leave the floor to our chair, Ramatou Kasso, advisor on policy and international relations at UCLG Africa. Ramatuka, the floor is yours.
Merci. Merci, Valeria.
Thank you, Valeria.
I think you have a translation and you have a head start. Je voudrais...
Good morning. First of all, I would like to thank the City of Dublin and its representatives for this welcome here. And I would like to thank the city for being the host of Capital of Culture, organized by UCLG Africa. We would like to also thank the members of the Culture Committee of UCLG. They have been working for quite a few years to encourage cities to think about different pillars and to capitalize culture as a policy asset. And Emilia is our chair. She's supporting us, she's encouraging us, she's always pushing us to do more for culture. I would also like to thank Jordi Pasquale, who is the indefatigable craftsman of culture. We know the support that you give to the different committees and sections so that culture can be integrated in our respective programs. Ladies and gentlemen, this summit of culture in Dublin is very important at different level because it comes after the adoption of the Pact for the Future for the mankind, for governments, and this was adopted in October 2022. That is last year when we were in Daegu. This Pact for the Future today is a framework that can help us really frame the work that we do in our sections and inside UCLG with guidelines that are men, people, and culture. We had in September last in New York a summit on the SDGs, and it's before the next summit of the future of the United Nations that will take place in September next year. So we are at a key point. It is a time where UCLG is really trying to leave nobody and no one behind. Culture is what is left when nothing else exists. We have different policies for people, for climate, for culture, and culture shows us resilience for territories and for communities. It is very important to rethink the positioning of culture in the SDG agenda. We are counting on mayors and on representatives of culture so that we can find ways to make culture the fourth pillar of sustainable development. As Valeria McCollin said, this initiative was born nearly 40 years ago. The European capitals of culture have inspired the other continents, have inspired Latin America. And in Africa, last year, we were able to celebrate the first African capital of culture, and that was Rabat. We have this workshop, we have other workshops, and they're going to help us to support us. We have experience acquired in Europe. We have our first steps today in Africa, and we see what has already happened in Latin America, and we are able to show what this debate can do to envision the future together, thanks to the UCLG Pact for the Future. Thank you.
Matuka. So I will now have the pleasure to introduce our first free speaker, Yanis Koukmas, the Elefsina 2023 European Capital of Culture, Ramona Lacto-David, Coordinator of Projects, Timișoara 2023 European Capital of Culture, and Adriana Viales, Department for Culture, San Jose de Costa Rica, UCSI Ibero-American Capital of Culture 2023. Thank you to the three of you for being with us. So, not lady first this time. I will leave the floor to Yanis Koukmas, Elefsina from Greece, to start presenting now the experience of the city as capital of culture. Yanis is the Director of Audience Development and Participation of the Eleusis 2023 ECOC team, the operational organ in charge of coordination and developing of Elefsina 2023 Capital of Culture. Yanis has also participated in Elefsina pilot project of the Agenda 21 for Culture, which is a program of UCLG, the peer learning and capacity building program on culture and sustainable development. So Yanis, please, you have the floor.
So hi, it's so nice to be here with you. Thanks for the invitation. And, you know, I'm from Elefsina. I represent Elefsina, Elefsina is now the European Capital of Culture for 2023, but Elefsina is also a historical city, one of the 5 sacred cities of antiquity, located 21 kilometers from Athens. Elefsina was known for the worship of Demeter, goddess of agriculture, and her daughter Persephone. It has been an important religious center since ancient times, since it was where the famous Eleusinian mysteries, an institution that lasted more than 1,500 years, took place. According to Homer, the mysteries were attended by the whole of mankind, women and men, irrespective of race, social class, or place of origin. Currently, it's a city of around 30,000 people. I think it's, till now, the smallest city that win the title of the European Capital of Culture. So, at the contemporary history, Elefsina became the center of heavy industry in Greece. So, we have a population-wise, Elefsina has developed as a workers' town in the same way as industrial centers the world over, and in fact, it acted as a destination for many internal and foreign migrants. As a result, the city became a melting pot of experiences and ideas, as well as a field for common struggles. From the 60s to the 90s, the city was dominated by the concerns and constant efforts of inhabitants to protect the environment and improve their quality of life. It is a local challenge. It's the environmental pollution. Elefsina was known about it, but it has damaged the bond between the citizens and their city, and the reason why many people decided to abandon Elefsina in the second half of 21st century. Towards the end of 2000s, we did with the deindustrialization having left its powerful footprint in the form of a series of dielectric factories along the coastline, the city started to seek a new identity. So the 2023 Ulysses Elefsina program, Mysteries of Transition, intends, through highlighting, strengthening, and supporting local potential, and through art, cultural heritage, research, and culture, as well as through initiatives with a direct impact on the daily life of the city, to boost the confidence, the pride, and the joy of creativity in the inhabitants, as well as to strengthen the sense of community. Our strategic aims is, and I think it will continue to have, is to strengthen the sense of identity, belonging, community among citizens, encouraging them to dive as a society into their rich collective memory and bring it to light so that it can be shared to all of them, to all of the city, to whole Europe. So we have projects, artistic projects such as Invisible Map, Stalker, Voices of Elefsina, to encourage and stimulate in interdisciplinary dialogue in the fields of culture, science, technology, and society. So we have a project of performing arts, narrative archaeology, Elefsis Innovation by 2023, Free University of Elefsina, to transform the city into a regional center of cultural education and creativity. We are 21 kilometers from Athens, but we try to decentralize the cultural policy and the educational center that Athens has everything, is the capital of Greece, is 5 million people that they are living here. But 21 kilometers from there are 30,000 people that are trying to change the history of their city. We offer residencies, training and practical learning programs, platforms and networks, and many, many other things. We want to expand the possibility of utilizing public spaces in attractive and unpredictable ways, designing to invite to a common use process all the different communities that have experienced migration, offering their experience to the culture of everyday experience. So we have a festival named Synikismi. And we try to development of a collective ecological awareness and the strengthening of the already high awareness for the environment. We have a festival named Ecoculture. It's a flagship program and we want to continue it next year. We also want to support cultural collectives, to promote the public space through multiple artistic uses, to see the neighborhoods as scenery, as a part of a theater, as an open scenery, as an open theater. And also, we try to contribute to the development of new infrastructures. Now, Elefsina has 10 new monumental buildings that at the beginning of the year of the title was only one. So we can speak about the legacy. And in that point, I have to say that pilot cities playing a significant role in the cultural strategy of the city. The city's 10-year cultural strategy is based on the 2 documents that have been approved by the City Council in 2016, namely the adoption of the Agenda 24 for Culture and the Cultural Strategy 26-25. With a 10-year plan, 2023 ELUCIS program is yearly analyzed related to the way in which its activities contribute to the cultural strategy, and the goal is to be updated through participatory process incorporating the ECOC Legacy Plan. We have the ECOC Legacy Plan and we have a cultural strategy co-created, co-designed by people of Elefsina, for the people of Elefsina. So we had the opportunity to work with the pilot cities, Europe, and we received the support by UCLG, the citizens, the cultural mediators, as we named the team of the citizens, take advantage of cross-border peer learning activities involving other pilot cities. The members had the opportunity to participate in a collaborative, transparent, and empowering process that involves local institutions, organizations, and citizenships to create a real impact in the long-term city's development based on the goals and the principles of Agenda 21. Now, okay, we have the tools, we have the experience, we have the methodology, and we all need time. So we will try to have a parallel, the legacy plan of the ECOC 2023 and our cultural strategy. Thank you for your time.
Can I have, yeah, thank you very much, Yannis. Sorry, I think that each capital could have half an hour to speak, but the idea is to have first 5 minutes kick-off discussion for each capital and experience, and therefore we will be happy to discuss then with all of you further questions from the floor and among you to deepen the exchanges. So Ramona, I would like to invite you at the floor to introduce the experience of Timișoara for 2023. So I give you the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm very happy that we actually opened the discussion with a focus on this program of European Capitals of Culture. Well, Timișoara, as opposed to Elefsina, is 10 times bigger. So we are talking about a population of 300,000 people. But as a link between Elefsina and Timișoara, it's actually Timișoara as well known for, it's in the western part of Romania, and it's known for its industrial profile in the country, and also the city of where the revolution has started in Romania. So with these two recognition of the city at the national level and in some international frameworks as well, it was very important for Timișoara to bring culture as another way of tackling its development and what is the future of the city. And in order to understand how Timișoara has experienced this title year, it is also important to mention a couple of information about the governance of the program, which is a bit different from other European Capitals of Culture cities, meaning that there are 3 organizations. 2 are actually public institutions that have a role in the implementation itself of the cultural program. One is the public institution of the municipality of Timișoara, the Center for Projects of the Timișoara, which I'm representing here, and the other one is the Center for Arts and Culture of the County Council, and then the Association Timișoara 2023, which was behind the original bid book, so behind the bidding process, now has more of a transversal role, meaning that it's responsible for the communication, for the volunteering program, and for the sponsorship, attracting sponsorship to the cultural program. So in order to understand this governance and in order to understand then the lessons learned from this cultural year, it's important that, well, I think one of the most important things was to actually bring all these different parties together, and the necessity to learn how to collaborate and how to work together. And this meant that cultural organizations at the local level had to open a dialogue with the public institutions and see what are the most important goals for the city. Therefore, maybe the first lesson learned was to understand the importance of heritage, whether it's built natural heritage or the creative capital, the social fabric that the city has. And it was important in terms of the built heritage. Yes, Timișoara didn't focus so much on investing in infrastructure, in actual built infrastructure of the city, and it has focused the program. What is the unique feature of the program is that it focused a lot on the content. What type of new content? How the city can become a laboratory to experiment new concepts, new forms of art in unconventional spaces, taking them out from a theater building, taking it into, I don't know, a flea market on the outskirts of the city, for example. So this was the first step. Then the natural environment as well, to understand, for example, the role of the river Bega in the architecture of the city, and actually it was through the Center for Projects, it's created a platform, and we have had a whole weekend, a whole festival focusing on cultural projects, events that are happening along the river banks, and opening up, having open doors of the cultural organizations that were very close. Yeah, so I think through the discussions I can explain you more about specific projects that have contributed to a transformation of the city.
Thank you very much, Ramona, especially for keeping the challenge of the 5 minutes,
Yeah,
which is always very difficult. We should do a peer learning exercise on the 5 minutes presentation. And I think there are already some very good ideas that are popping up from your 2 first introduction, which are culture as a dynamic in the city, as a way to rethink the city, to engage with the citizens, to think out of the box, to rediscover places, to re-give birth to some experience. So I would like to see if those words resonate with Adriana from the Latin America point of view. So Adriana Valles, I would like to give you the floor as our 3rd inspiring speaker. And do you prefer to speak from, you can choose if you want,
okay.
or I think you have the micro on, so I will just...
Okay, voy a hablar desde aquí.
I'll stay here, you don't mind. I'm going to speak from here. Yeah, wherever you prefer. Good morning to you all. For us, being the Ibero-American Capital of Culture 2023, was a landmark, and it helped us show culture and art that is produced in Costa Rica at international level, with the aim to have more democratic access to culture. Moreover, apart from the access that the inhabitants have enjoyed, the residents and visitors alike have enjoyed the access to all the arts activity, and the capital has become a space for integrating diversity. and to take it into account the democratic question in a peaceful world in all the different spaces where we have seen how projects have been developed and they have won awards. This happened in Mexico. In creative projects became an alternative for conflict solution when we have networks of drug trafficking. San Jose as well is a capital where we see a lot of problems linked to drug trafficking. There's a lot of narco traffic, and it is important to develop projects to be able to have this type of approach. Thanks to that, we have had resources. We have been able to work in a partnership with other groups. So it's not only the municipality, but we can work with all partnerships with different artistic groups. We have so many in San Jose and in Costa Rica. We have been developing as well a cultural policy, which are going to be launching very soon, focusing on rights. And with this approach, we are committed to give priority to take action in those populations that have been historically excluded, not only in San Jose, but everywhere in Costa Rica. And they have more obstacles when they want to enjoy their cultural rights. These are people that are in poor, they live in poverty, women, vulnerable people. And they demand having spaces not only to access culture, but to share, to showcase what they do, to showcase their different and various things that they are doing. As well for children, boys, girls, young people, LGBTQ communities, disabled people, we are trying to generate conditions to access, give them access so they can enjoy their rights. These are affirmative policies to ensure that all these people can take part. They can recover public spaces, they can access to training, and they can be creators and propose artistic activities. This is important because we recognize the cultural rights that have been ratified at international level and within the cultural ministry in its framework of cultural rights. And as well, we are focusing on the access of all these rights. And we are as well trying to reflect the right to the city, trying to ensure that everybody can participate in the city's activities. So all these rights can be enjoyed in a responsible way, meaning that we all work together. Years ago, it was only the municipality deciding what to do. Now it is different. Now we are working in co-creation involving all the stakeholders. The policy has been updated. That was a challenge because it happened during the pandemic. We had so many plans, but we had to do everything online. But we managed to gather important information. We managed to identify challenges and opportunities, and we tried to see how San Jose could be working together with everybody else. And that has been ratified with our political approach, trying to integrate different participation mechanisms, financing mechanisms, in order to ensure that all the stakeholders can make that their cultural and artistic wishes become a reality.
Yeah. I will switch into French, if you allow me, for cultural diversity and linguistic diversity. So, je pense que tu viens.
I think that you have just told us something that is very important, thanks to your experience as capital. It is continuity that is important. You need to work on an inclusive, participative, and sustainable cultural policies so that the products of the different events organized as around the capital of culture can be maintained. I want to say that because first you start by thinking, but then you have to consolidate. So you have to start by the thinking process through your intervention and through the other interventions, including what Yannis said. We can see that what has been done can be strengthened through tools given by UCLG, for example. Yannis told us that Elefsina was a pilot city of the Agenda 21 for culture. And San Jose in Costa Rica has received the jury's award and this was co-financed, it's a prize that was co-financed by the City of Mexico and UCLG. And it is important to co-think with the population, to be as inclusive as possible so that we can have sustainable change on the whole territory. And this sustainable change is the red line throughout your interventions, because you also want to reconnect to sources. You talked about heritage, Ramona, and when we talk about heritage is real and sub-real heritage. I would like to thank the 3 members of our panel for those first interventions that gave us a lot of inspiration. And I'm going to give the floor very quickly back to Ramatukaso, and we're going to go to the Q&A session, if that is possible. Okay. So before we go to the main part of the panel with the colleagues from the African Capital of Culture program, are there questions in the room? Do you wish to ask any questions, maybe to deepen one point or another? If you have any questions, but I also have questions myself that I can ask. You can raise your hand and the microphone will come to you. Okay, well, I'm going to start with my own question then. We always tend to show the positive results of processes. What is the biggest challenge you met when you tried to implement the Capital of Culture program? Because you understood that you are following what has happened in other cities. But what can you say to our African colleagues who are on their first steps? What is the difficulty you encountered, the main difficulty, and what is the advice you could give? So one difficulty, one piece of advice. You have 1 minute each.
Okay. So for me, the main problem was the lack of infrastructure and also the bureaucracy. Especially the bureaucracy was a major problem for us to maintain the effort to be close to our people, to the citizens, because we had to had official papers and all these things. So it was so difficult to do it in a small time account. For me, that was the 2 things.
For Timișoara, it was to build up the confidence that the program was implemented in a decentralized manner. So the BitBook, the cultural program, has gathered cultural operators, local cultural organizations from Timișoara. It was a long process as well. The title was won in 2016, and the actual implementation year is 2023 because of the pandemic, because of the corona. So this bringing again together the cultural community, the cultural professionals, and gaining the confidence that they are able to deliver this cultural program was very important. And it was very polarized. Even last year, it was still there were still voices, very negative voices, that the cultural program is not going to be good enough, and it was always this critique of the program. So I think at the end of this year, 2023, we can say confidently that this has changed dramatically. All the cultural operators have made an effort to step out of their comfort zone, to come with the new ideas, to actually learn to work with each other. And this is what I was mentioning before. Public institutions, like for example, the Hungarian theater has collaborated with a local cultural organization, and they have introduced in their annual theater festival a capsule on fluid views, it was called, and it was in partnership with a cultural organization working for LGBTQ LGBTQ plus rights in Timisoara. So this was a continuous dialogue, and this has contributed to this confidence, and I think we can capitalize on this a lot in the coming years.
Thank you, Ramon. Adriana?
Well, in our case, it was very similar to what you are mentioning. Bureaucracy. We have a new central government, a new president, a new minister for culture, new general director. So the whole thing was complicated, trying to be able to have partnerships and have joint projects, because we had to do a lot of projects in partnership with the central government, and it was very, very complicated. But we managed to establish many partnerships, but bureaucracy was the main obstacle that we had to deal with during the year.
I think the point you are mentioning is very important, notably for our African colleagues, because cultural decentralization in Africa is very recent, and therefore the role of states is still very much important on cultural policies. And this would be, in my opinion, one of the key challenges, but also opportunities for African colleagues to show how much culture has taken a key role in animating cities in Africa, and as in other parts of the world, how local authorities are really pushing forward and put on the front floor of the scene culture as the fourth pillar of their development, and I would say maybe the first one in terms of importance. So with this,
Je voulais tout juste, avant que le panel
before the panel finishes up, I would like to ask Adriana, what was the impact of the prize that was awarded to your city?
In fact, it was that we were able to connect with a community that needed this connection, that was living within the neighborhood of drugs. We couldn't even access some areas because they were in the hands of the narcos and the drug trafficking. The fact that they could be seen in an award, so their work, their effort, their community managed to achieve that. They managed to work together, working together with the narco traffickers. This is what happened. That was very useful. It gave them a lot of motivation. And for us, it's one of the star communities that have been able to be part of our project and our program. We saw these young people, boys and girls, devoting to art. We could see their artwork, and we saw them growing and developing. And it was important for us to be able to contribute and see the award, the prize that they got. That was the best thing that we could ever see. It was a great satisfaction. We felt that we were useful and we're giving a service, and that's what we want to do as a municipality.
So before we go back to the panel, is there any more questions in the room? Please do speak up. If you don't, we will move on to our African colleagues, but I think we have a question. Yeah. And
thank you very much.
Hello, good morning. Yes, Beatriz Garcia. I have spent many years researching the European Capital of Culture program in particular. And I'm really, really interested in this notion of the different capitals of culture around the world working together. So my question, starting with the European Capital of Culture framework, there is this ambition to explore what is called the European dimension. And often we discuss what that means and what is it that is European, and whether that means just relating within the different European countries, or whether it's a broader international conversation about Europe and the rest of the world. So I wonder what capacity you have. Given all the different pressures to deal with a local agenda, so you need to engage with the very distinct needs of your citizens, the national dimension, the regional dimension, then the continental dimension. What capacity do you really have or you feel it might be possible to explore, to relate with those that host this initiative in other continents? I mean, I don't know whether you have attempted that, or what do you think the future might be as the other initiatives also grow in maturity and might have very interesting frameworks from which the European counterparts could learn from. So yeah, I wonder how you see that possibility to really link up the European capitals of culture, the Ibero-American initiatives, and obviously the fantastic work that is being done in Africa with the new range of editions.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. Key questions, especially when Europe is highlighting international cultural cooperation in its new work plan for 2023-2026. So, Yanis?
Yeah.
Ramona?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I believe it is very important to capitalize on whatever goals have been achieved on a local and regional or national level, and to bring these unique features of each program from each European capital of city into an international scene, and to discuss about them. And well, while we haven't been in direct control of the projects that were developed throughout the year, throughout the European Capital of Culture program, we know that a lot of the cultural organizations in Timișoara have established international partnerships. They are members of international networks where they take the results of their projects in Timișoara that they have happened to discuss and to talk about them. But I believe that this has to happen as well from a cultural policy level, from the municipality level. And, well, this is one of the platforms where we can discuss about these results, and how this network can contribute to actually having local governments or making local governments accountable for the long-term plan, for long-term cultural strategies, for the legacy of the program itself. And I believe Timișoara, it is in a lucky position right now. The local administration, it is open to that and to take this commitment further in putting culture at the center of their goals for the development of the city. How Timișoara has from the level of the city to bring into an international scene the discussion what has happened, how the cultural diversity of the city contributes to changes at European level, or how can Timișoara connect to other cities from African continent or from Asian continent. I think this is important as well to explore. We haven't, I think, in a organized or in a focused way, it hasn't been the main goal yet, but it comes as a consequence of the results that have been achieved this year.
Thank you, Ramona. Yanis and Adriana, very briefly, because we have 1 minute, but maybe this panel and this occasion can also be like a food for thoughts to bring home some ideas to connect before the closing of the two capitals. So, Yannick?
So we also, we always have in our mind the three cycles, the regional cycle, the national, and the European. We are part of a big family of European Capital of Culture, and we are so proud about it. We also member of the UCLG and the Pilot Cities program. So as you can understand, the Pilot Cities play a significant role because we can have a co-design, a co-create cultural strategy. And also, in parallel, we have the European Capital of Culture family. So we can combine those two into the thinking and have a vision for the future of Elefsina. But it depends from the third mayor that we will have now. You know,
yeah. This is why partnership with civil society is very important, because civil society is a long-term partners, and when politicians change, cultural policy can continue through the advocacy of civil society, and this is something that UCLG is doing every day, strongly partnering with civil society. So I think this is a very good lesson from the networks. I would say, if I can build on Beatrice's question, is that the world is already, I suppose, in Timisoara, as in Rifesina. I think you have people from different origins that are living in your territory, so the world is there already at the local level, and how through those communities you can connect back to the world on the international dimension Beatrice was talking about. So maybe for last word from Adriana, is this also resonating from a Latin America point of view? This starting from the local and going to international, how to integrate the international dimension in your sub-regional vocation with the.
Yes, so despite the fact that in Central and Latin America we have very different conditions to Europe, but this type of work and this type of space allows us to see where we're going. So when we look at other cities and what's happening there, we can take that and adapt it, adapt different strategies and different projects to our location, our tropical situation, and integrate them in our alliances and projects.
Adriana, I will switch again into French for the translator. Donc nous venons de voir aussi.
So we have just spoken about the fact that the UCLG could be used as a way of thinking about the international aspects of the initiatives, because all the cities are partners within the UCLG. So I am going to ask you, if you don't mind, Ramatuka, to take over for me, please. So thank you very much for this. And it was very, very useful to see the different experiences shared by our partners. And we're going to be able to talk about this further in the coming days. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
You remain in the room in the venue, and it's like a continuation of exchange from the floor.
Thanks.
Yes.
Avant de démarrer le deuxième panel,
before starting the second panel, we're going to show a short video, which is going to be a bit of a link between the first and the second panel. It's a 3-minute video that shows the highlights for Rabat as European Capital of Culture. We are going to ask the next panel to come on stage while we're showcasing this video. We're going to ask Isabelle Martin from Maputo to come on stage, please. We're going to ask Monsieur Ngapi Apitoclash from Brazzaville to come on stage. We are going to ask Hugues Honde from Brazzaville to come on stage as well. And the representative from Dakar will be speaking online. So I'm going to ask for the video to play, please.
Monsieur le maire.
Mr. Mayor, please. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives, and dear audience,
Réglage technique.
Ça va, Jordi? Vous voulez qu'on... Ah, d'accord.
Quand la technologie
Technologies, huh? But hey, it just shows us how humans are important, really. Because we are going to wait for the video to be sorted. While we're waiting, we can perhaps... Is Dakar online at present? Technology, yeah. It's brilliant when it works, isn't it?
Merci.
Thank you.
Donc,
these were highlights of what we experienced in 2022-2023 on the first African Capital of Culture. And we celebrated this with you and with all the different stakeholders. And we focused on the role of culture on public policy in Africa. Because the challenges we have in Africa is to do with the organization of institutions. So we had a lot of forums for the mayors, for the ministers, for the local authorities. And I imagine that in other areas like Latin America, there are challenges as well, but also celebrations and cultural events to do so. So for Africa, this was a very important event because it started everything. And in 2024, we are going to have another event in Brazzaville where we're going to celebrate further what has been achieved. But I'm going to leave the stage to other speakers, including Isabelle Massy from Maputo, because you may not know, but we did launch a tender for different capitals to get involved, and Maputo answered the tender. We chose Brazzaville as well, but we are going to celebrate Brazzaville in all different African cities. We haven't been able to do so yet, but today we have been able to celebrate African culture in Maputo, including celebrating Brazzaville in Maputo. And that's what we are hoping to continue. And I am going to leave the stage to the mayor of Brazzaville. So, Mr. Mayor, you may remain seated. And apologies because we started late, and I'm going to insist that we stick to the 5 minutes per speaker, please. So I will keep an eye for this, and apologies if I ask you to stop at some stage. Please, Mr. Mayor, go ahead. Thank you very much. Dear General Secretary of the UCLG, dear representatives of Dublin City Council, dear delegates, I would like to give you thanks from the mayor of Brazzaville and the governor of the Kinshasa province, Mr. Govila. They have given me the privilege to be with you today, and I am communicating to you their feelings of gratefulness from Brazzaville and Kinshasa. We are delighted to be part of this 5th summit of the UCLG. This summit is a great forum that gathers the different institutions who work towards implementing cultural programs. This summit is a great opportunity to further reinforce the participation in local areas and at an international level, and to present to the 140,000 cities members of our organization what has happened in Kinshasa and Brazzaville. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we are part of the UNESCO network of creative cities in the music area, and with very close capital cities that are Kinshasa and Brazzaville, we are using this advantage to further develop the music agenda and try and work and live in peace. To further develop economic, commercial, and cultural links between the two cities, a specific commission was implemented. The commission aims to promote the dialogue between the city authorities and the populations, to reinforce the links between the two cities and to facilitate exchanges between the two cities, to foster exchanges between the borders of the two countries, and to work on the common interest. The Commission examines the activities that need to be implemented to decentralize further the activities between the two cities and which are linked to the Congolese rumba. The Congolese rumba is officially on the list of immaterial heritage. Working closely together, we are aiming to become the capital of culture for 2024-2025 so that we can celebrate the artistic and cultural heritage of our two cities and to share this vast richness with the rest of the continent and the world. Becoming an African capital of culture will reinforce the autonomy of our cities and of our continent. And I can say that Brazzaville and Kinshasa are both strongholds of culture and art in Africa. They have a very, very strong history and have a lot of cultural heritage, this heritage being linked to diversity and music and arts in general. For many years, Africa danced to the rhythm that came from these two cities. Today, in Kinshasa, we have the headquarters of African Rhythm, and this institution keeps spreading African vibes throughout the continent. Every 2 years, close enough to the Congo, Kinshasa and Brazzaville become the capital of music through the festival FESPAM ANSIC, which took place in January 2023 this year and which will take place in 2025 next. In addition to this very important festival, others and other cultural events take place. Those draw millions of visitors and include painting, dancing, theater, which are part of the cultural richness of these two cities. Kinshasa and Brazzaville are two cities that witness the creation of art in many, many areas. Currently, in Kinshasa, the biggest cultural center in Africa is being built. And this is the proof that culture is so important in these two cities. Brazzaville and Kinshasa, ladies and gentlemen, rely on your support from all of you to keep being representative and to keep defending the local and regional authorities so that we do not leave anyone or regions behind in terms of culture. So if I can finish, if I'm still within my 5 minutes, I would like to add that this last note, as a representative of Brazzaville and also speaking for the mayor and the governor of Kinshasa, as a representative myself of my delegation, I would like to invite you to visit the two cities of Kinshasa and Brazzaville in 2024, and I would like to thank you very much for your hospitality. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You said it very well. Our year of the African culture, capital of culture program is going to be exceptional this year because we are between two sides of the same river. We're going to implement public policies. We're going to celebrate, but we're also going to act as UCLG wishes us to act, which is the cooperation between local, regional, and international levels. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So I am now going to ask Mr. Hugues to talk to us briefly in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. I'm going to ask him to say or to tell us what is the added value for Kinshasa and Brazzaville. We already had a first celebration in Rabat, and how are you going to conceive this celebration between Kinshasa and Brazzaville? 2 minutes, please. Yes, can you hear me? Well, Brazzaville and Kinshasa are unique cities in the world because they are the closest capitals in the whole world. They are on either side of one of the largest rivers in the world. I'm talking about the River Congo. But the specificities of those two cities is that they are cultural cities. And humankind is based on culture. And culture is part of the cement of our cities, is part of social cohesion. If you know African music, if you know Congolese paintings, if you know Congolese literature, and if you know other artistic expressions, what I can say is that Kinshasa and Brazzaville are going to bring a new light to it. Why? Because it's the first time that two cities have been designated as African capitals of culture. And it's going to be a unique experience on both sides of the Congo River. Rabat has opened the way. And we have heard the experience of other capitals of culture in Europe and in other continents. And we can learn from all those experiences, especially because Brazzaville and Kinshasa are offering varied and diversified programs. And that is going to contribute to strengthening our culture. I want to say something else on Brazzaville because our intention started in 2012 when we have a strong will to develop our tourism offer from a cultural point of view. And we really are working on promoting our music. And that's what we are developing through infrastructure. And all of this is done through a technical support. And we have a lot of promotion that is linked to what is happening in Kinshasa as well. So I think it's going to be a great celebration for those two cities for the next few years. And we are going to have two great African capitals of culture. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes. I'm now going to give the floor to Maputo. We have Isabelle Massy, who is with us, and she is advisor for culture and tourism in Maputo. And she is also going to have a celebration at the same time as Kinshasa. Isabelle, you have the floor. And you can speak in English or you can speak in French or in Portuguese. No, we do not have Portuguese. We do not have Portuguese today.
Okay, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we don't have Portuguese. I think that is a kind of a discrimination. I'm kidding. Okay, good morning, everyone, and all protocol observed. First of all, I would like to express our gratitude for this invitation from UCLG and Dublin City Council on behalf of our mayor of Maputo, Dr. Enéas da Conceição Gomes. Maputo, as I said in my presentation, is the city that never sleeps. And we have a very special role in terms of culture because we are the capital of the country and our responsibility is huge. Maputo is the capital city of Mozambique, and it has a rich cultural offer such as museum, theaters, art galleries, festivals, cultural events, and of course, delicious cuisine with traditional recipes and fresh seafood, which is a perfect combination or a fusion between African, Portuguese, and Arabic. Culture is integrated into the sustainable development strategies in our country through the national policy when we talk at national level, and at the local level, from the municipality view, we have the municipal development plan that recognizes culture as a driver of sustainable development. Culture promotes growth, economic growth particularly, through cultural tourism. We have various examples in Maputo of festivals where the local community is part of the value chain, providing different types of services and goods. For instance, I would like to just share with you a very recent event that we hosted in Maputo. Is the dance festival, Danse l'Afrique Dance, that my colleagues from the Francophone know it very well. We have just hosted that event from 20 to the 26th of November. Is the biggest Pan-African festival that highlights the best of dance in Africa. So Maputo was, I will say last week, was the real capital of culture in Africa. This event, the Danse l'Afrique Dance and other events that we organize in our capital or we host throughout the year, move not only artists and producers, but the entire economic and social value chain in Maputo City. In this Danse l'Afrique Dance, all Maputo hotels were fully booked with visitors who attended the dance festival. That's why we call Maputo the city that never sleeps, and the culture is the main dish of our menu in Maputo. In Maputo City, culture is very strong and is the epicenter of everything. In Maputo City, culture is made by people to people. No corporate event or any other type of event happens without culture being present. And culture also plays a very important role in our families in Maputo. Is a family income for many citizens in Maputo. I will take an example of the director of Ikinani. Ikinani is one of our major festivals in Maputo, and he was the one who co-organized with the Instituto Francês, the French Institute, he co-organized the Danse l'Afrique Dance. When you ask him about the venue for this big event that we had in Maputo, he will tell you that we don't have a specific venue for that event because our city, the whole city, is a venue when it comes to cultural events. And it's really true because He normally uses even unfinished buildings will be used to host cultural events. And talking about Maputo is talking about Africa as well, because we are part of this big and beautiful continent. And in Africa, culture is included in all major continental development blueprints, such as the African Union Agenda 2023, and various other instruments such as the revised African Union Plan of Action on Cultural and Creative Industries. But there is one issue that stands out from various challenges that we have in culture for Africa and for Mozambique and Maputo particularly, is about the financing of culture. But the good news is that there was a decision taken by the leaders, the African leaders, in 2021 during the African Union Summit, which calls on member states, Mozambique included and Maputo, of course, included, to allocate at least 1% of our budget, of the national budget, to arts, culture, and heritage by 2030. So this is the challenge that we are facing now as African countries. We are facing as Mozambique, and we are facing as Maputo. But culture will continue to be a very strong sector in our country. And there are so many initiatives that are going on, from festivals to concerts and so on and so forth. So we have our national and natural and cultural potential. All we need now is to improve this cooperation, the cooperation between African countries with Europe and other cultural entities. And I think that through the UCLG, you are doing a very good job, and we are very thankful for that. And thank you for this opportunity. Thank you.
Merci, Isabelle.
Thank you, Isabelle. Thank you, Isabelle. Thank you for turning into reality this dancing festival in Maputo that took place last week. It is true that culture is lived by everyone, but through the celebration of those capitals of culture, we can go further. We are going to talk about financing during some of the other workshops. It is important that we have that initiative of the African Union that is welcome to improve financing. We can also improve cooperation around different celebratory events. We are a little bit late, so before I give the floor to members of the audience to ask questions, I would like to ask Mr. Alain Bijek to talk to us for about 2 minutes, because you are one of the partners for UCLG Africa. So you need to talk to us about the consequences of the Capitals of Culture program that we were able to organize thanks to UCLG and thanks to the European Union. So before I give the floor to the room, I would like to give you the floor. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Yes, I am in charge of an international summit of the creative and cultural arts industries. We were selected by UCLG Africa and its partners, including Rabat as capital of African capital of culture. And we were asked an impact analysis because, as you said, one of the greatest challenges for the last few years and for the next 5 and 10 years is the creation of a cultural ecosystem. So for 4 days in Rabat, over 300 specialists, experts in copyright, have talk together to see how we can have sustainable industries in the world of creative arts and culture. So we have a label, we have a trademark, if you like, for UCLG Africa and all its partners. And the aim of this brand is somehow to promote copyright, because that is key. And after Rabat, African Capital of Culture, we presented this brand to the meeting of African mayors, and they validated this initiative. And now we are going from capital to capital. Yesterday we were in Rabat again. A month and a half ago we were in Ouagadougou. In a month we will be in Abidjan because there will be some musical events being organized. So we are going to brand this event and we are going to promote it on the international market for African events. So between this and the African Capitals of Culture program, we want to bring to light the structuring of copyright. That is absolutely key so that artists can be fairly remunerated. And this is important as well for Kinshasa and Brazzaville as new African capitals of culture, because it is very important to have the participation of all economic and cultural operators. So it is a new initiative in Africa that could also spread on other territories. So I would like to ask you to contact UCLG Africa. And I forgot an essential partner, and that is the International Confederation of the Copyright for Artists, and it's the CISAC, CISAC, and has helped us since 2019 and is going to carry on helping us for the future. Thank you, Alain. Thank you. I'm going to give the floor to Jordi now. We're going to need a microphone for Jordi.
To convene this connection among the three initiatives, the African Capital of Culture, the European Capital of Culture, and the Ibero-American Capital of Culture. We understand this exercise as a peer learning exercise. Learning from each other, but also you have the responsibility to inspire cities in other continents. In Asia, in Middle East, especially the European ones, because you are the, say, older initiative. But also, we believe that this connection should lead the organizers of these three initiatives to go to the next level and to join global conversations that are taking place, urgent, acute, challenging conversations that take place at a global level. How? Well, let's discuss. This is the purpose of this workshop. This is the purpose of the whole summit too. But let me give two examples. Can these initiatives be organized with zero carbon? How? Second, can this initiative be a truly empowering woman exercise, a capital of culture? We will have sessions on this tomorrow and the day after, but we need your ideas. We need your ideas, how these initiatives can go to the next level. And of course, we will be happy to improve our tools, the cultural rights toolkit that we have, the capacity building programs. But we also want to hear from colleagues from Middle East, from Asia. There are not strong initiatives in this field, but your voice is also needed in this global conversation. So let's think about this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordi.
Merci, Jordi.
Thank you, Jordi. It is true that we have our Middle Eastern colleagues among us. So if they do want to take part in this common thinking, around the initiative of capitals of culture, they can speak. Because if you have other questions, we can also hear your other questions if you have questions to ask of the panelists. Maybe we could try to go back to Jordi's question. Oh, there is a question at the back of the room. A microphone is coming. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to remind you that there were some Arabic capitals of culture in the past. In the past, we had Damascus, and we also had Ramallah. So it is a duty for us all to think about that. And maybe, as Jordi was saying a minute ago, we could start to interconnect at a different level, go beyond the states and nations, but talk about cultural diplomacy. This is a duty. We must remember what has happened in the past and not position ourselves on either side of what is happening currently. Thank you. Is there another request for the floor? Oh, over there.
I'm just wondering if the different capitals of culture, but particularly the African and the European, are able to, is there any work to support the decolonization of some museum collections, for example? I'm thinking of if you have a European capital of culture with a national museum that has some artifacts in it from different African countries. Is there a way that the capital of cultures working together can actually help? I know there is a lot of work going on already, but is there a way maybe that the capital of cultures can support each other in that process?
Une dernière question, peut-être avant de revenir au panélistes.
One last question before we go back to our panelists for the answers. Emilia?
I mean, this last question also triggered a thought that I have been struggling with when trying to give shape to our cultural agenda for the future, and the role that the capital cities of culture can play in general. I think the last question is very pertinent, and I'm wondering in this same trend whether we can think of ways in which the capitals of culture can also help us shape the kind of the next frontier for culture as fourth pillar and the culture goal. So I was wondering whether there is a thinking behind this that we could develop by creating this community of culture capitals as well. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Milia. And I think it goes back to Serhan's invitation about the city diplomacy and how cities can help be very pragmatic in addressing some geopolitical issue and political debates at national and international level. I will just go back on the question of decolonizations because I think it's very important, and I think this can be a role for networks such as UCLG, such as the Creative Cities Network, such as us civil society networks, and the Future Capital of Culture. Personally, we are working particularly in Africa, Culture et Développement, since 64 years now. And personally, my message would be, yes, there are sad parts of history, but there are also very happy parts of history that we should not forget. And I think that cultural relations between Europe and Africa are much longer and richer than just the decolonization part of it. So I think that the meeting point of the European and African capital of culture could be to reinvestigate the rich histories that bring us together rather than divide us. So this would be my invitation, while of course not forgetting the difficult past that we can all share, but let's not forget Europeans are also sharing a very difficult part among themselves. And I think one of the reasons for the European Capital of Culture, one of the reasons for culture being at the core of the European projects is also to bring peace among ourselves. So this is, I think, a message that Culture et Développement would like to share with all of you. With this, maybe we can invite the speakers to answer the questions on how cities can address this global issue et comment peut-être, pardon, je switch en français pour faciliter.
I'm going to switch to French now so that it will be easier for our colleagues then to answer in French. How Kinshasa and Brazzaville, who are two bridge cities, who are two hyphen cities, how can they place culture in the heart of cities and in the heart of development from a city while opening to the world? How can we translate that in the future program of Kinshasa, Brazzaville as capitals of culture? May I? Yes, thank you. I think that the main concerns that were expressed here were good contributions. And their aim is also to reaffirm the role and the primacy, really, of culture. I'm always ill at ease when we talk about culture as the fourth pillar. Culture should be the first pillar. There is no future without culture. And we were told, President Senghor at his time said, that culture is at the beginning and at the end of any type of development. When we talk of culture, we talk of mankind, and that means the material and immaterial heritage. It means that development starts at the cultural basis. Cultural diversity, cultural diplomacy at local authorities level should be the head of world diplomacy, because it is within territories that we have citizens, and it is within territories that we have to work on the various world issues. The Congo Republic hosted the summit of the three large rivers of the world, Mekong, Congo, and Amazon. Culture was at the heart of those discussions. So yes, cities have a role to play. Yes, there is a link between culture and development. It is obvious. We can't live without that link. But what is true is that we must avoid negating history. But we must capitalize on everything that we have lived through in the past, whether it was good or not good, so that we can create better citizens of the world, a better citizenship of the world, so that we can have a world of peace, a world of living together, and a world of cohesion. Let's not be afraid of that word, because when there are events happening, it's mostly and mainly cities who suffer, and culture plays an important role as an item that can bring people together. We talked about creating spaces for cultural dialogue. Culture must be the cement, and we must rethink peace in the world in that light. For Kinshasa and Brazzaville, yes, your concerns are now ours. The concerns in Europe, in the Middle East, in Africa are there. UCLG must start large initiatives, and we cannot forget the first capital cities, so that the current capitals can have inspiration from the first programs. And why not? We could also create future action plans. and we would build a bridge between cities. And we should celebrate culture as it should be celebrated, and that can influence whole states. The problem is that we don't have enough of culture at the right place. Thank you very much. Isabel, do you have something to add here? What is the link with our past? What is the link between African capitals and European capitals? And the question today of decarbonation, that is a new role for culture.
Thank you so much. What I will say is that Maputo is a very good example of cultural diplomacy. And the whole historical relation between Africa and Europe is really connected to this cultural diplomacy. And we see culture in Mozambique, in Maputo particularly, as the industry of peace. And we think that we are doing that in a very good way. When we host all these type of international events, we host them despite all the differences and all the political issues. And we don't care from where you come, we don't care from where an artist comes when it is for, from where you come, from where an international artist is coming when it comes to culture. Because we do believe that culture is the industry of peace. So what we do normally in Mozambique is to have all these conversation between the different associations, national associations, regional associations, and try to bring a common dialogue on how we can improve the culture of the different different provinces, the different locations in Mozambique and in the regional parts of Africa. So we look to culture as the main tool that you can use to improve any kind of the development that you would like to achieve in a certain destination, a certain country.
Isabelle, vous avez une minute?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Isabelle, you have 1 minute. So if you could go a little faster.
Thank you so much. About the carbon zero, I will leave that conversation for later because I would like to have the peer learning regarding to that particular issue, and thank you so much.
Merci. Je pense que...
Thank you. A question here. Please, go ahead. The microphone is on the way.
Hello, my name is Else Christensen Rejepovic. I'm a cultural development and policy consultant, and I've been working with European Capitals of Culture for 15 years, heading first a bid for a city. Then I've done a lot of research, worked as a consultant for cities, and now I'm on the panel for the selection of European Capitals of Culture. I see that there is an innate dilemma in the cooperation between continents. On a European level, it's already difficult for cities to find an incentive to work on a European level. And the reason for that is that culture per se is the competence of the member states. It is not the legal competence of the EU. So the money and the political decisions on culture is made in the member states and not on an EU level. This means that a city bidding for European Capital of Culture has its political decision and its money coming from the local source. But at the same time, the EU has this European Capital of Culture brand that is so attractive. And it comes with criteria, but it doesn't come with money. So for a city to win the European Capital of Culture title has to have a European dimension, because that's what it says in the criteria. But it's not easy, because it's not necessarily in the interest of the local stakeholders. I've also worked with East Asia, with the East Asia Cultural City Network, and the question in my research was, how can the East Asia Cultural City Network cooperate with European Capitals of Culture? And the conclusion is that it requires three things. One is that it needs to be asked for, called for in the criteria that you need to cooperate. There needs to be funding to go along with it as a second point. And you need some kind of facilitation. Because if you are a local city somewhere in Europe, somewhere in Africa, Iberia, East Asia, what number to call to cooperate with somebody somewhere else? So you need to have some level of facilitation as well. So we can maybe hope that in terms of the European Capital of Culture initiative, which is an integration initiative from the EU, not a cultural initiative as such, it's meant to foster integration. How can you, in the new generation of European Capitals of Culture past 2033, foster this incentive to cooperate across continents? Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is, of course, a key questions with maybe two strands of answers. The first one is again to add criteria, and the work plan for the Creative Europe program is already leading this way through the strategic synergies, calling for more cultural cooperation internationally. But I would say that, again, UCLG is the first place to answer these questions. Cities have their own cultural cooperation strategies, and they are cooperating with several cities in the world. I think that as Cultural Development, we have the chance to cooperate it since more than 10 years with Brazzaville. And Brazzaville has partnerships that are animated daily with European cities. I don't know if yet Asian cities, but I think that through decentralized cooperation, cities have already a basis for this international cooperation. And of course, the European Capital of Culture can bring an added value with cities that have less maybe in focus this international cooperation dimension through culture to bring it in. But it is already there. I have to say that I made a study myself for a project within Cultural Development. In France, all in France, more than 50% of decentralized cooperation projects, including twinning, are based on culture and heritage. And they touch the 5 continents: Asia, Latin America, within Europe, Africa. So international cooperation is already there. It's just that we don't speak about. So maybe in this regard, this is a new room for dialogue between UCLG, the European Commission, and maybe Jordi, you want to react to your first questions to the colleagues, or make a last comment before we move on, or as the leader of the organizations, you want us to move on with?
Merci Valéria. Je vais...
I'm going to go back to this question and confirm and insist that UCLG today, with the Culture Commission, where our members are gathered, I can confirm there is collaboration, international collaboration, and a partnership exists between Africa and Europe. This needs, for sure, reinforcing, but it is there. What we do in African capitals is strongly inspired by what happens with the European Capital of Culture. And we are talking here about a bottom-up process, because local authorities deal directly with national authorities to discuss cultural policies. So during celebratory events for Capital of Cultures, there is a process already. However, it's a little different from Europe, because I understand that in Europe, the process started at the top a bit more than at the bottom. And here we're talking about a mix of different approaches, and we can discuss what type of collaborations can be used to reinforce what's happening, what diplomacy can be used to reinforce the sustainable economic model and peaceful model that we are talking about. And I believe that the coming days are going to be a great opportunity to discuss all those possibilities, because as you know, we can't talk about culture without cultural actors. And I would like to come back to the question about cultural goods between Europe and Africa. It was a good question, and going back to arts works, and making sure that artists can live out of their creations. And I believe that cooperation is going to lead us to find how UCLG and the Culture Commission can enable us to find correct solutions for our problems. So I would like to thank the panel now. I think we will have a third panel later. Jordi, I believe that the vision for the third panel are going to be a bit more limited, because it's going to be about the European Union and Africa. So I would like to thank our speakers for now. Thank you. And thank you so much, Ramatuka, for the transition. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Hugues and Isabel from Maputo, for sharing with us your vision. I would like to go back to the questions in relation to challenges, and cities and capitals can be used as laboratories for finding solutions for the wider state. Do you know, because we spoke about a bottom-up process and how to participate in culture in Africa. And as Ramatuka said, there are more and more commitments from the states to support cultural policies. However, the main activity, whether it comes from Brazzaville or Rabat, comes from the cities themselves in Africa. Activities in the cities, and also, obviously, still the concern about decarbonization. And how can culture participate in that area? And let's look at the impact of technologies in that area. So, for instance, Zoom for a minute use is the equivalent of a bottle of water. So imagine if you're spending the whole day on Zoom, how many bottles of water are needed to in terms of carbon. So for me, it's a very important question that needs to be taken into account. Of course, we need commitments in that area for the environment and for cultural cooperation as well. So the question of how to deal with those challenges, it's really crucial. And actually, it's the title of our next panel. So what solutions can we find together?
The different capital of culture programs can still lack, where they can still be improved, how this program could be enhanced, and how they could better connect also with other initiatives. And on those bases, I would like to invite on the floor Francisco Mugaburo, Deputy Director of International Relations and Cooperation of the Union of Ibero-American Capital Cities, and Emmanuel Robert, Deputy Director for Cultural Policy at UNESCO. Francisco, Emmanuel. Let's get in, and I propose for the last panel to be very informal. And just maybe ask the two of you leaving out the presentation, because I think they are in the program, and your title already introduced yourself quite well, I think, and your expertise. So what would be your first reaction on what you heard so far before going to the what's next big question?
Alors, in French or in English?
As you prefer.
All right. Peut-être en français parce que je voudrais.
I think I might speak in French first because I'd like to come back to the comments from Brazzaville. I was very interested in what they said, saying that cities are bridges for international diplomacy. I believe this very strongly, and I couldn't have said it better myself. I also heard Isabelle saying that culture is the industry of peace. For me, my first reaction is to comment on these 2 points and to say that these challenges are crucial to African capital cultures, to the different networks that have developed recently, because cities do contribute fully to the challenges worldwide. And in order to answer to these challenges, we need to think about this point, because clearly, in terms of SDGs, we're really behind in terms of achievements. And the 2030 agenda for sustainable development is very, very tough. And today, cities need to engage in that area. Thank you, Emmanuel. I think this relates to culture as a next objective for sustainable development, and actually maybe putting it in the first position this time, not in 4th place.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to change from what I was going to present because it's worth it based on what we've been discussing. In the Union of Iberoamerican Capital Cities, we have members on 2 cities, in Latin America and in Europe. And so that gives us a unique richness. And why am I changing my presentation? Because we've spoken a lot about collaboration between Africa and Europe. We in UCCI collaborate between Latin America and Europe. San Jose in Costa Rica was up in one of the previous panels, and San Juan de Puerto Rico will be a capital of culture in 2024. And the essence of that collaboration, having an access of culture with 2 languages on 2 cultures, the 2 languages being Portuguese and Spanish, the culture unites us and enriches us. And this network that was established in 1982, and in 1985 the European Capitals of Culture Initiative was set up. In the same year that Dublin was the European Capital of Culture, we had Bogotá as Capital of Culture in Colombia. And so we have worked on that transversal axis right since the start, the very early years. So, as I said, we've had Brazil, Costa Rica, Buenos Aires, different capitals of culture, and we had Madrid before that. So there's that constant communication between countries and between those 2 continents. And so I think that richness and that knowledge that we have of being a bridge between continents, we are Ibero-America, and we have culture at the center of that initiative and that network. And I think that's something very important that we can share with you. And I think it's basic to create a community of capitals of culture where we can all share. We're very kind of siloed. Each has their own agenda and so on. I think we have to increase the communication with different continents.
Bring us back to the last questions raised or intervention comments to the previous panel, which make I would say, the label capital interesting, because maybe it doesn't come with money, but it comes with a symbolic power. And bringing together capital of culture from the 5 continents can deliver powerful message to support change into the political realm. We know that the tensions between the local authorities level and the national state levels, it's something that is up to date on the 5 continents. But indeed, the symbolic power of culture and the symbolic gathering together of the capital of culture, also with regards to the 2030 agenda revision to better include culture as a goal, can be something we can work on all together. While, as we said, we don't need to limit ourselves to the label, because the label will go only to some cities, and missions such as the one that the UC Culture Committee or the Creative Cities Network as UNESCO is really to empower all cities to have an international cultural policies at local level, which is a participatory one, which involves civil society. And on these questions, then I would like to give you back the floor to your maybe first initial intervention on how do you see things moving forward. We have challenges worldwide. We mentioned some. Inequalities are rising. We speak about new technologies, but we have to take into consideration the digital divide. Not everyone has access to internet, so not anyone has access to opportunities today, including learning, peer learning opportunities. We were discussing about peer learning. So how do you see moving forward with this notion of capital of culture based on your own experience? What is the next challenge? What we should address in the next days as, let's say, brainstorming exercise?
I think first the capital of culture could have a strong voice for the localization of the Sustainable Development Goals. We know that this is also an area where we are lagging behind, where the international community has failed to achieve the objectives. And when we're talking about localization, I think it comes through all the interventions we could listen to this morning. We're talking about people, we're talking about places, we're talking about a tailor-made approach to development. And I think there is still a long way to go, because to be quite open with you, I think we are in a better place now in terms of pushing for culture in the international development agenda than we were probably before 2015 during the negotiation of the 2030 agenda. So I think culture has gained momentum within the UN system, within other fora, and of course at the local level. But I think if we look at the way that if we look at the recent SDG summit, and if we look at the path to the Summit of the Future next year in 2024, which will shape the next development agenda, which will start shaping the forthcoming development agenda, I think there are still many gaps in terms of how development is addressed. We still do not put enough focus on rights. This is a very, very strong gap, and I see our OHCHR is in the room and can probably bounce back on this. I think we are much too silent on fundamental rights, and rights and culture is about rights. So I think pushing the culture agenda in the international conversation on sustainable development is also pushing the rights agenda, and we need to bring this very strongly on the table. And I think that's also where cities have a strong role to play.
Francisco?
From the perspective of UCCI, first of all, on what you were saying about the labels staying with specific cities, we have in our organization a committee, a cultural committee, where all the cities take part, and they elect the city. They have to present a joint program, cultural program, so it doesn't stay in one city. And looking to the future, I think the main word would be alliance. It's open to the outside world, stop looking inward, and collaborate with other people in UNESCO and obviously UCLG and umbrella organizations such as this. So I think that's very important. The local focus of each city and the exchange of cultural practices is going to be basic. In UCCI, we finance cooperation projects. So, for example, last year we worked with a project in Mexico, and also between Brasilia and Buenos Aires, promoting art and culture in specific projects. We worked on a gender project on women in those cities, in Brasilia and Buenos Aires. We celebrated the anniversary of democracy in the Cono Sur, in the south of Latin America. And there were 3 different cities participating. And so that's looking at the specifics of establishing projects and financing them and working between different cities and countries. Financing impact and evaluation phases as well to see what is the real impact of the projects. And also we look at and focus on access to finance, both public and private. And so there's a private foundation that participates with us, very important, and they open new horizons for us that allow us to be more ambitious. And so in all areas of cooperation, but especially in culture, public and private financing is very, very important, and we need to continue working on that.
I wanted to ask a question of Emmanuel. This is what I would like to know. Initiatives such as Capitals of Culture, how can they help the work of international cooperation within UNESCO? How do you see this relationship? I think that the strength of this type of initiatives is that it builds a real, practical community, a space within which cities can share experiences. But beyond that, cities can build together. This morning, I heard the term of co-building quite a few times, and several city representatives have explained that the fact that a city is designated as capitals of culture means that they can strengthen their policies and build on different strands. And I think that the strength of this initiative is exactly that. We can then build a space that groups together different practices And in that community, we can have new initiatives that will enlighten our world thinking for the world challenges that we are facing and that we were talking about. So this is how I see that. It's a community of practices. We could maybe ask the room if you have any questions or any remarks, anything to ask of our panelists. Gauteng, do you have something to say? Yes, a contribution from Gauteng? Yes, a microphone is coming to you.
Earlier on, and this panel would have made a reflections about the geopolitics impact on culture, on the capital of culture. The Ukraine, Russia, the Palestinian stroke, the issues of Israel. What is the impact? Or do you think you can comment about that? How do we join things together? Okay.
Thank you very much. We will invite, of course, the panelists to react. Is there any other questions while the mic is running among tables?
I think that's more for you.
Otherwise, we will address this first. Hot issue. Il y en a un autre? Est-ce que je vois?
Jordi.
Ah, Jordi.
Jordi.
Pardon.
A brief comment on the criteria, because this is where the challenge is. In 2013, Else, when this cycle of the European Capitals of Culture was being thought, discussed, the cycle 2020, 2032 or 33, there was a proposal over the table of the European Union. It was forget the national approaches, arrange a pan-European competition with cities self-organizing to suggest pan-European projects. Then the international or the European dimension was fully guaranteed from the origin, from the criteria. And we added, ask one non-European partner so that this conversation can be global. I think I can release the answer of the European Union at that moment. The answer was, don't create problems. The result is that without the consideration of that proposal, now we have a deeper problem than the one that the criteria, the suggested criteria by Bob Palmer, Trevor Davies, myself, other, we raised to the European Commission. We have now Rahmatuka, representing UCLG Africa, shaping the criteria for the African Capital of Culture, Francisco Mugaburu, representing UCCI, with new criteria, which we helped develop in 2018, but that, of course, room to improve, if I may. The European Commission thinking the post-2033 in this case, but probably some new guidance could be introduced. Why not? So this is, this has been in the tables of discussion for some years. Let's see how we can perhaps push a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordi. And I think one of the answers is indeed that you just mentioned that the current Capital of Culture are the results of reflections done 10 years before. So the world is changing fast. So how we can adapt political and financial instruments to a fast-changing world. Addressing youth, we didn't speak a lot about youth, but I think that in Africa is more than 75% of the population. In Europe, we have exactly the opposite figure. So how do we build a dialogue across continents where we have an intergenerational challenge to address, to build a world in common, because this is, I think, our responsibility at local level to show that it is possible. And this is why cultural diversity at local level, which can be internal diversity and, of course, migration from other neighboring country. We speak a lot about migration from Africa to Europe, but we never speak a lot about internal African migration, which is a daily challenge for African cities in terms of cultural diversity. I suppose it is the same case in Latin America. No, it's the same case in Asia. So this is for me already a common strength that the 5 regions can address in common, to try find solution and then exchange among them and see how we can make it a kind of international challenge. You were speaking, Emmanuel, about localization of SDGs. I think that UCLG made a huge contribution to show how SDGs were localized through culture. And this is, for example, my invitation to international organizations is that let's build on each other's expertise instead of duplicating instruments where then we can't bring together the results of what is really happening on the field, because each one has to show, of course, the interest of its own existence. But at the end of the game, the community you were speaking about, the international community is losing the momentum because each one is producing documents that raise the same point in different contexts, instead of working together to produce one strong statement, one strong document. And I think, for example, that the UCSI model, even though it can be improved, even though it's work in progress, it's already an answer on how Europe can cooperate with the Latin America, so how Europe can cooperate with Africa, how Europe, and we are talking about Europe, but it's the same for Africa, how Africa can cooperate with Latin America and Asia. So I think the what's next is more or less these big, let's say, these big questions is how do we bring all these together? And I think that we have to wrap up. So it's very difficult to close the discussion. I think that Emilia may have one closing. No, sorry, Emilia. There is one question from the. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. I just didn't want to close this this panel without addressing the question. It's an important issue, and over the coming days it will be unavoidable to address that question, even if it is not with answers. What I invite you to reflect about, and I think during the opening remarks we might have the opportunity to also reflect on it, and in the coming days, is how we need to change the question. So it's not about how the macro-political situation is affecting culture, but the answer that I would dare us to think in this gathering is how can culture affect the macro-political situation? And how can we, through culture, try to address some of the challenges that we are facing there? There is no single thing, and I would say, from the perspective of the global organization of United Cities and Local Governments, that is not touched by the realities of conflict areas, not only in Ukraine and not only in Gaza right now, but also in other parts of the world. But in particular, these two very wounded and open conflicts that we are experiencing and are challenging many of the values and narratives that we have put together, and many of the frameworks that we were operating on. And if anything, I think that putting culture at the center of the discussion might allow us to look at other things when addressing the conflicts, which are not only violence and confrontation. So if we recompose the question, we might be on the right path, and I hope that we can create a safe space for exchange in these current discussions and in many others that our World Organization will need to have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Emilia, and it's true that artists have been at the forefront
Emilia.
for this.
Une dernière contribution.
Is there a last contribution, last remark? Oh, yes, at the back of the room. You have 1 minute.
Muy buenos días para todos.
Good morning to you all. A few days ago, we had the Iberian Night of Museums. This was a proposal from Brazil last year, proposed it to the UCCI, and then we had other people following up on the same proposal. And there are many cities that were connected thanks to such an event. But I have a question, which is part of something that we did, which is try to have a conversation all year long to achieve our goal. But there's something that I'm always wondering, which is different. How can we manage to have this network of cities that is always connected all year long to talk about geopolitics, to talk about all the things that are being debated at international level, diplomacy, culture? It feels that sometimes we come to these spaces every year or every X year. We have really deep debates, but then the conversation, the debate stays there in a standby, to say it in a way. And these joint networks, all this collectivity that we have created after the pandemic, we have learned how to be connected, how to network, but it's still very difficult to be permanent on the daily life of communication with the cities. Maybe in Europe it's easier. In Latin America, we are really far away. I'm from Bogota. I'm the Secretary of Culture. We are really distant from the other countries. So how do we manage to keep it? This is my big question. I haven't found the answer yet. Yes, coming back to the UCCI, Bogota is a very active member. Until last week, we had the General Assembly in São Paulo. They had the Vice Presidency of the Well-being. Now they're in charge of the Andean region. We have in the UCCI Vice Presidency of Culture for 2 years, and now it's San Salvador, in Salvador. And this is the way in which in our entity we can keep pushing the agenda of the cultural subjects in Ibero-America beyond the capital of culture, which is something that is awarded every year. So any issues, any concerns, any important topics concerning culture in these 29 cities, everything that happens through our vice presidency. That's how we keep moving things forward.
Emmanuel, would you like to react quickly before we close? Would you like to react on the questions? I think that UNESCO is quite well placed when it comes to tense situations and management of tense situations.
Notably in relation to the comments formulated by the participants, which I think is very critical, and this is really somehow what we're here for, right? I think that the strong value of this initiative and of enabling exchanges not only between cities at a continental level, but across the continents, is really to forge the citizens of tomorrow and to expose the youth to cultural diversity, to also, we had also, I think, interesting example this morning of how capitals of culture are working towards social inclusion, towards including all segments of societies, including refugees. And I think this is critical. I think we're talking about building the global citizenship and building the foundations for the peace of tomorrow in a very, very fragmented world that we're faced with today. Thank you very much.
Merci. Donc,
Thank you. Thank you. The debate was very rich, and we are going to stop here, Jordi. We have had 30 minutes, but 30 rich minutes, and that's the aim as well. We want to talk about those questions. And as President Senghor was saying, he wanted to encourage African people to take root and to be open. It is very important for our youth of today, and there is a narrative that we need to talk about. Somebody talked about the Arabic capital of culture. That was an initiative that used to exist with Damas and Ramallah. We've had the European capitals, the Ibero-American capitals. We also have African capitals, and as it was said, culture must be what we want to have in this century. We live in a fragmented world. This was mentioned earlier. We have Ukraine, we have Gaza, we have many other conflicts. And if we think that culture can be the first pillar of sustainable development, it means that informally we can bring people to think and to come together, because we have this tendency to close ourselves over ourselves. So it's very important to be aware of the cultural dimension, but also the economic dimension and the geopolitical dimension of our capitals program. And we need to create a narrative for sustainable development through culture. So today, thanks to the proposal on the community of practices, we must strengthen this UCLG initiative. And this is very important because we have this come-and-go movement between the national and the international level, and we need to irrigate this movement. Culture is what links us together, and culture is what is left when there is nothing else. Thank you. Thank you very much. And this is one last invitation to cultural diversity, because when we talk of culture, we tend to be generalists. But culture is also seeing and understanding the culture of others. And that is not easy. It has to be seen, it has to be accepted. That's diversity on a daily basis. And I must give the floor to Ainara Fernandez and to José Alvarez from UCLG. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Valeria, and thank you to all panel members. I'm going to be very brief. We are going to ask you some questions now. We want to see how you can interact with the work of UCLG. So can you scan the QR code on your screen? And if you cannot scan this QR code, go to www.menti.com.
And whenever you're ready, we'll start the consultation. Thank you. Are we all set? Can we please go to the next slide, please? Great. So let me first introduce, I'm sure many of you will already be aware, because many of you are, of course, from the UCLG ecosystem. But the UCLG Pact for the Future has 3 axes: people, planet, and government. And we're asking you to tell us which of these is more involved with the day-to-day work that you do. So for now, I'm seeing that most of you are, of course, linked to human rights, to cultural rights, and to the access of people. I'm also seeing a fair amount of you who are intrinsically linked to the government access to local governance, to international governments, and to the relationship between these. But I'm not seeing many of you yet addressing the planet axis of the pact. Just, there you go. Let me know who you are after this. I just wanted to say that this will be running throughout the 3 days. Today we are doing a brief introduction, but we will be having this consultation over the 3 days. So all of you who are joining later on will be able to scan the QR codes. I will be all over the place in the venue. Next slide, please. So To introduce a pact for the future, to develop it over the coming years, UCLG introduced 4 entry points that you can see here, which are reclaiming the commons, redefining finance and the economy, developing cultural policies to regain trust, and rebuild the governance architecture. We would like to ask you which are the most important for you and which ones are those that you are most closely involved with, and my colleague Ainara will comment on the results. Don't be shy. Can you see properly? Do you need me to go over them again? Ah, there you go.
Okay, so we can already start seeing that there are some answers that are coming up on the screen. And we know that this is a difficult question to ask, particularly before going to lunch. But we did want to rally the energy that has been created in the room throughout the different debates to ask you this question, which is essentially a question about prioritization. So we know that these 4 entry points are important to the work that every one of you is doing, but we wanted you to let us know in terms of priorities, where are you standing with respect to these 4 entry points? And we can see that as of now, the temperature in the room is that perhaps the majority is prioritizing cultural policies as having an important role in terms of building trust. And I think, Jose, that this relates very nicely to the conversation that we were having before, and in particular to one of the points that was raised about the importance of culture in terms of creating safe environments where we can have conversations that can help us de-escalate conflicts, create bonds that go beyond violence, and so on and so forth. But we can also see that there are quite a few people in the room that are responding around the role of culture and reclaiming the commons in terms of cultural policies that can help improve access to common goods and common services, but then also commoning strategies as ways of coming together to access resources. So again, this is a question that is a difficult question, we know that, and this is going to remain open, as Jose was indicating before. So maybe we can now move to the last question before lunch. And of course, it's a question about next steps. So think about this Mentimeter exercise also as a way of communicating directly with the team. So I think that it's a nice moment to collect the thoughts that you have already shared as part of the last debate that we were having in terms of what could be the next theme of the next Culture Summit. So let's see what kind of responses arise from this question. This is an open-ended question, so you can get creative, and you can let us know what you think should be the next main theme of the next summit. There's a lot of future in this question. We have one brave response. No, okay, so 6 responses as of now. We're going to just wait for a few seconds to see what else emerges. Okay, so we can see that youth is at the heart of the word cloud that's forming from the different responses. And I think that this is very powerful in itself, because if we're thinking about the future, we need to think about youth. But we can also see how there are some other common topics that are common topics. You saw what I was doing there. Some topics that are emerging as very important as well, which have to do with the commons, which have to do with peace, but which have to do with innovation as well, and collaboration, building bridges. I think we do have a lot of material to work with from this very quick exercise. And again, if you leave this room, you have more thoughts that you want to share with the team. You can go back to this Menti. You can do so by entering the code, but also by scanning the QR codes that will be showing on the screens in the venue for the whole summit. So I think that we can leave it here. That was very, very inspiring, very refreshing, very energizing. So I think that this is the end of the consultation. And
for now.
And I think that we are now off to lunch, right?
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, for a very, very inspiring morning.
Thank you.